I'm delighted to meet you up virtually today. It is last event out of 6 serial webinar commemorating the 26th AJ anniversary. The COVID pandemic has pushed us to accelerate the implementation of industrial revolution 4.0, such as Zooming, like what we are doing now. That's the good thing because we can communicate borderless and more efficient. But the pandemic is also accelerating dark trends of journalism in the region by showing facts of unfavorable policies done by the governments toward the freedom of the press. In the Philippines, Duterte's government has canceled the broadcasting license of the country's largest broadcasting, ABS-CBN, and prosecute Maria Reza, the CEO of Rappel, for cyber libel. Malaysia government continue using the Communication and Multimedia Act to prosecute media workers who are reporting a pandemic. Also, the Minister of Justice of Timor-Leste has published a draft law proposing to reintroduce criminal defamation law into the countries after becoming the only state in Southeast Asia which abolished its criminal defamation law in 2014. Like Malaysia and Timor-Leste, Indonesia implements the electronic transaction law, which threatens freedom of the press and freedom of expression. The law has led the increase of people in prison and alleged defamatory comments on social media. Indonesia has also restricted the access of journalists to West Papua. So we are going to hear more about the issue from various perspectives or our prominent media activists. We have Jen Wattington from International Federation of Journalists. Hi, Jen. How are you?
Hi there. Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Dan.
Thank you for joining. And then also Raji Rajak from Gerakan Media Merdeka or GRAM, Malaysia. Hello, Raji.
Hi, Dendi. Hi, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Okay, and then Virgilio da Silva Guterres, or Jill, President of Timor-Leste Press Council. Hello, Jill.
Hello, good morning. Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi, host Dili.
Dili is getting hot. Hot politically and hot environmentally.
I miss Dili very much.
Yes.
And
we hope we have time next time.
And then Wahyu Diatnika, or better known as Komang, Chief Editor Tempo Magazine Indonesia. And I'd like to start with Jane. And she is going to talk about the condition of press freedom in South Asia and the challenges faced by unions. But let me introduce her to all of us first. Jane Wattington is Director, International Federation of Journalists, or AFJ, Asia Pacific, and former journalist who has worked in Australian and international media for more than 20 years. Since joining the organization in 2013, Jane has led the AFJ Asia Pacific Press Freedom and Development work in region, including safety journalists, media development, and gender rights advocacy. She has been pivotal in driving the AFJ gender mainstreaming agenda and campaigns on issues such as online harassment of women journalists. Besides, AFJ, together with the Malaysian affiliate, the National Union of Journalists Malaysia, has launched the media advocacy campaign, Tagging My Media Matters, to highlight the ongoing challenges faced by journalists in Malaysia. Jane's time is yours now. You have 15 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Dandy. Look, I'd just like to start by just saying thank you for having me in this forum, and it's great to be part of such fine company here today. Thank you all. And also I'd like to congratulate Aji on its 26th birthday on August 7. We, as a member of the IFJ since 1994, we appreciate Aji's efforts even before the authoritarian regime ended in the country. We also add our hope for Aji, especially during this pandemic, that is able to maintain its commitment to the 3 pillars of Aji, which are protecting freedom of the press, increasing journalistic professionalism, and improving the welfare of journalists. You know, to say that Aji has been a strong defender of journalism in this region is an understatement, and we're very proud to have Aji as a member of the IFJ, and no more important time than now, as we're going through this unsettling time, trying to adapt already in our region, you know, and around the world. Journalists and media is going through a massive phase of disruption that's changing the way we all work. The last thing we possibly needed right now was to have a pandemic to hit us like a tsunami. It has been a really, really difficult time for media in this region, in Southeast Asia, in particular. I'd like to say in particular, but it's actually very bad right across our region. But in Southeast Asia, we're seeing a lot of worrying and concerning developments during this period. You know, it's under the cover of COVID that we've seen a lot of regimes, as Dandy's outlined, coming in and curbing the freedoms that have been so hard fought for by journalists and unions in the region. And they're coming in under the cover of darkness, with the excuse of, you know, protecting wider society, you know, that they're bringing in measures that are you know, in a couple of ways affecting journalists simply by movement, access, things like that. But also, as we've heard, implementation of some worrying laws. You know, we've seen a regression in Timor-Leste. It's really disappointing to hear what's been going on in Timor-Leste. You know, here we had this beacon in Southeast Asia. You know, Timor-Leste has come so far in developing and protecting its media freedom, enshrining that in its constitution, and also setting up a press council. And then we see a government come in and just sort of turn that over almost overnight, without warning, without consultation. So it's that sort of example of governments reacting badly in this situation rather than working with the media to find solutions. You know, we see a sort of knee-jerk response to the pandemic that is built on fear and uncertainty. You know, fear that media are going to expose perhaps government weakness in their handling of the crisis. So, you know, I mean, the Timor-Leste example for us is a very important one. The IFJ has been advocating pretty strongly in these past weeks and supports all the journalists in Timor as they're fighting for common sense to prevail in that environment. You know, that's sort of one example that's got us busy. In terms of the IFJ affiliates across the region, though, no one has been spared. As we've heard in the Philippines, we've got journalists who are facing a critical sort of safety crisis, but also they're battling to save their national broadcaster, ABS-CBN. We've seen Rodrigo Duterte, you know, basically pull the covers out from underneath that broadcaster and effectively cut off communication to the wider society at the time they need it most. It's a really, really devastating blow, not only for journalists, the journalists who work there, but for society. We need information at this time more than ever, and to see Rodrigo Duterte's move there and backed by the politicians to end ABS-CBN's license is a real worry. One of the things, and of course, we've also got Radzi in Malaysia who's going to talk a lot about what's been happening there. I mean, yeah, so we've had a political change in Malaysia. You know, the hope that we had in Malaysia of progressive reform, early movements towards developing its own media council, that's all been pretty much, and Radzi will expand more on that, I'm sure, you know, pretty much put that whole discussion on hold in terms of that media council. What it needs right now more than ever is a media council, but that's been silenced since March. We were meant to hear back on the media council and its development back in March, and it's been absolute silence there. You know, the IFJ's sort of been working with its affiliates, talking to its journalist members across the region, to try and understand some of the experience they've been going through and to document that, because I think it's really important that we understand the impact of this crisis, not only on journalists and their working lives, but also on the unions that represent them and that are fighting for them. It's interesting that in June, the IFJ conducted a survey of its members across the region, and we asked them about how they were coping during this time. And interestingly, you know, at a time when we're seeing sort of so many job losses or wages not being paid or wages being delayed, unions have actually been a place of solace for a lot of members and a lot of journalists across the region. These are spaces where journalists are going to get support. And the unions have told us that, you know, among our members, we did a survey across about 28 of our affiliates, and 45% of those unions said that they were stable. Another 25% actually said they were growing. So while there are some concerning aspects around the pandemic, I have some optimism of the space that unions and journalist representative organisations can have during this time. We can, if we're working together, be a voice of solidarity, be a voice of reason, and build a bridge to governments that are perhaps worrying about what they're going to do next. It's been great to see so many journalists adapting to the online space. We've been forced to change and change our practices. Here we are having webinars. I mean, we have become more connected during this time, and we are crossing borders, crossing oceans now, and to have these sort of discussions. So, you know, what for all the negatives, there are some upsides that will change the post-pandemic world and how we function as media. You know, the situation for journalists in Southeast Asia, I mean, the greatest threat to journalists in Southeast Asia in the last year from our work was the fear was of arrest or detainment or being targeted in their work. You know, I would say that trend has continued since we've entered this phase. The job security remains a major concern, you know, as media have been forced to shrink operations. We've also had journalists being put out to work without adequate protective equipment. So unions told us that the first demand on them was for personal protective equipment because so many media houses were not providing that equipment to them. And this is like a pen for a journalist or a phone. You know, this is the tool of our trade now. We need to be protected in our work. And so media companies that are not doing that also need to be put on notice. But that has been a major concern for journalists across the region. Yeah, so in terms of the work that we're wanting to see and support journalists in the region doing, I mean, the economic impacts on media houses has to be a leading discussion for us going forward. And one of the big impacts on unions during this time is there because they've been on the front line responding to journalists' needs and calls for help, that there's been an impact on the rights monitoring that is so important for so many journalists across the region, keeping a watch on governments when they're attacking journalists. You know, the situation just overnight with the raid on the Al Jazeera team in Malaysia is really indicative of the period that we're in, that you're seeing these sort of raids happen. We've had Stephen Gan in court, you know, in Malaysia. It's been a really worrying time. So, you know, I don't want to talk too much. I'd rather leave it to my colleagues in the region and happy to answer some more questions. But I guess the critical concerns are, you know, the restrictions of movement that we're seeing, the legal controls, the winding back of freedoms, and we've got some pivotal cases, the Maria Ressa case, Stephen Gan's case. These are, you know, these are media outlets that are the new face of, you know, not so new because they've been around for a long time, but for media in a larger context, they are the future of journalism, and this is where governments are wrestling in how to deal with the online media enterprises that are supported globally, that have a critical impact locally. And so governments are testing the waters on these kind of outlets, pushing them to their limit as a sign, as a warning sign to all others. Look, we're going to do this to some of the biggest players in the industry. So heaven help the smaller, you know, the smaller outfits or the lone journalists or the freelancers. So, you know, this is the message that's being sent out by bully governments that don't want to be questioned.
Thank you, Jen. Yes, thank you very much for your explanation. I think now we just move to Raji. Raji is a spokesperson for Gerakan Media Merdeka or Freedom Media Movement. He is a dedicated journalist with over 10 years of experience in online and print and broadcast media companies, focusing on politics, pop culture, and current affairs. Raji is also advocate of media freedom in Malaysia, active with the free media advocate groups. He is also experienced in public relations, volunteerism, and activism. I am hoping Raji is going to talk about how media in Malaysia was hampered by some governmental decisions during the pandemic, as well as the Al Jazeera case. This is the newest case in Malaysia. Let we hear from him the latest dynamic of media in Malaysia. I offer it to you, Raji. 15 minutes.
Thank you, Manindi. Sorry, good morning, everyone, and I would like to wish Aji good luck and happy birthday, happy 36th birthday. So when we started in 2013, 2014, we are taking Aji as our role model for media activism in Malaysia. Okay, so in this pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, we started with the political crisis because in February there was a political movement that shifted the government, that toppled the previous government that won the election in 2018. At that time, we think about it as a very long ago time because at that time it's not that serious yet. But at the same time, I remembered one of the minister at that time was exposed to a person who is COVID positive. So everyone, all the reporters who were like standby in the Prime Minister's house has to check and has to be worried about the COVID lah. And then the government changed and we still have to work, even though the lockdown, we still have to work. And then we receive, because of the new government and because of the pandemic, there are some, some problematic things. see, the government will have their press conference every day explaining the situation, which is good, Prime Minister, which is good, but they only allow official media. That means the government media, the bernama NRTM, and no one else is allowed. And then there's another problem regarding that not everyone is allowed to cover things on the disease and implementation of COVID. And what made it worse is that most of the new ministers are very silent on things. So it's really hard for us to get response from the government about the issue. And then we have our first real problem is when Tashni Sukumaran, one of the South China Morning Post reporter, who was investigated for a tweet, not for a story itself, but for a tweet. He's about the government is detaining the migrant workers in Kuala Lumpur. And then basically we just went asking why us and make a fuss about it, and he was called and for investigation, but now there's nothing much about it. And then suddenly we have Stephen Gunn being and Meshakini being subjected to court because of comments made by readers in his website. It's not even letters, but it's just comments. There's a story and there's comment. So he was called about it, and we still have to wait for the decision, or maybe they will give a fresh, fresh charge about it because it was in federal court. So even if it ended there, they might be, if they really wanted to do it, then there might be another set of charge coming. So we are waiting for that. And then it came to Al Jazeera, right? So I know some of the people there, and the documentary itself was put out that way, and it provokes emotional anger from the Malaysian public. Yeah, we understand that, but that's the thing is even it's not that misleading. But what the most for me the problematic thing is the government respond about it. I mean, the government could and should easily do another interview with them or respond to their queries, and it can be okay. But it was such a heavy-handed tactic by, for example, the minister who's responsible for that answered about it in the press conference that's only attended by official media, by the government media. So it's really hard to get a right of reply of that. And then using authorities on thing is very funny, you know. I mean, coming, I think since 2016, even 2016 to 17, the last leg of Prime Minister Najib government, you see that the government is trying to open up, trying to let media in. There are only like small instances about the problem, but now it's opened up the whole can of worms about whether this government is committed to the press freedom or not. Because yeah, it could easily be done in such a way. I remember when the Al Jazeera staff, 7 of them were being called to the police station, and then there's a press conference by the police chief, and then the journalist asked whether what is happening, and then the police chief himself said that no, we are committed to protect the journalists, we are committed to protect the media, and they're saying that the staff is only being called as a witness, as witness, not as suspects. And then we thought it's okay, then they're gonna handle it like this, and then suddenly yesterday we got a tip off, said, oh, the office is being raided now. Is from the multimedia MCMC, Multimedia Commission, Multimedia Communication Commission. So when we ask them, say ask the police. So there's not really like, yeah, it's really hard to get information on that. I mean, you could, I mean, anyone who has good PR could handle it very well, and the media could report on things that very objectively. And that's and somehow we feel like this is a start of a worse thing. And in Parliament itself, the minister was saying that basically admitted, saying that yeah, it is Al Jazeera was targeted because they did a negative story about Malaysia. I mean, how can you be objective if you are painting a news company to being like that? There's so many, as I said, there's so many things, so many ways the government could handle it, yet it didn't happen. And as for the press council, I was one of the pro tem committee for the Malaysia Press Council. We couldn't, the chairman is Pramesh Chandran, Malaysia Kini co-founder. But we just finished the draft bill. I think we have we started writing our draft in February before the government collapsed, before the last minister. So, but until now, we are still trying to seek an audience with the new minister, because there's no engagement and nothing concrete about what is the future of press council, which is, we think, could be very well help, not solve every problem, but help to delegate the problems. And it's really hard because in Malaysia, I think this is the first time that everyone from the broadcast, the newspapers, the online portals can convene together and talk about what we're going to do, how we're going to self-regulate, and what without the government heavy hand things like. So, and another last part is that with pandemic, and there's we using so many acts, and the movement to the progress toward the movement to help to open freedom of expression thing and to amend several laws in the country as being halted, seriously, because yeah, COVID take precedence, and you can talk about the Official Secret Act, the Sedition Act is to stay. They are taking upon themselves to, in the name of to fight the fake news, which is, I think it should be the media should play a big role on it, not the people in power. So yeah, I think that's the update that was happening in this country.
Thank you very much, Raji. Yeah, I think what happened in Malaysia is a new homework for IFJ as well, James. Yeah, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of worrying during this period, government working badly, more bad than media. So I think it's nice to be discussed later in the Q&A. And now we can hear from our friend from Timor-Leste, Jill. Let me introduce to you, Jill. Jill Virgilio da Silva Guterres. He's a president. Now, actually, you are president of Timor-Leste Press Council, right?
Yes.
And okay, and then since 2016 until 2020, President Conselo. Oh, I mean, this is Dewan Pers Timor-Leste Press Council, okay? And then from 2014 to 2020, Secretary of Board of SIEPA, okay? And then he is also ex-director executive Haburnas Foundation. And then President Association Jurnalista Timor Loro'Sai. And since 1997, he is also a member of Blok M Siar News. Okay, as I note in the introduction, you have a problem coming up in Timor-Leste, like the recent policy coming from the Minister of Justice of Timor-Leste who has published a draft law proposing to reintroduce criminal defamation law into the country. So could you tell us your role and what the future of media in Timor-Leste in general? Please, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Once again, good morning to all the panelists, Rajak, Jane, and Dendi. I will start by congratulating AJI for its 26th anniversary. I hope that the spirit that push the founders of AJI in last 26 is still there in the new generation in Indonesia to continue to serve the public with progressive and good information. Yes, from Timor-Leste, I think Jane just mentioned that we have since 2000, we can say 2000 until last, still until today, we can say that we, journalist community, we enjoy let's say we used to say honeymoon for freedom. We can write everything, we criticize the government, and we come to do some strange relationship with the government. For example, the government also provide assistance, financial assistance to media, and also to association through the office of what we call here of civil society office. There's a unit in the Prime Minister office who is providing funds for civil society organization, including media. But the criticism from the media is still we try to be we say that the assistance should not be a condition to shut the journalist. So we have been referred as the most, let's say, most freer country in the region in Southeast Asia. We can see, looking at the index made by Reporters Sans Frontières, that we jumped from 94 to 84, and now we are in the 78. So that's the pride that we have so far. But the bad news came, I think, last June, when like in Indonesia, we used to say, tidak ada mendung, tidak ada apa-apa, tiba-tiba hujan, tiba-tiba banjir masuk. There's no sign at all. And when the public and the government, we are concentrating how to tackle this, this pandemic, and this draft just came up. The draft is very short draft, but they want to, they call it, maybe like in Indonesia, they call it aturan tambahan. They want to add more
some regulation.
Yeah, in the regulation, in the article, some the criminalization that it's already in the we call it civil code, everything about that about the defamation, but they want to criminalize. So we don't. At that time, we said, what happened? Our from our analysis is that the government or some of the politicians in the top, they are very concerned with the presence of hate speech or everything in the social media. I think in Timor-Leste, the access to social media, particularly Facebook, it's around 300,000 Facebook users. So it's mean I think 1/3 or 1/4 of the population. So we have the government. They are very concerned about this because the focus of the target of the bullying mostly is the politician, the president of the republic, the prime minister, and even some prominent leaders. They are the target. So it's a shock for the journalist community and also the civil society. So by then we start to combine our efforts to say no to this initiative, and we also get a copy from Minister of Justice, and then we say we wrote our letter to Minister of Justice, and we have sent also copy to Prime Minister and our ombudsman of Human Rights Ombudsman. We do have a Human Rights Ombudsman here, and also to President of the Republic. We say that we are not going to analyze the contents. The principle for us is we are against criminal defamation. Because we see that this is, we are not going to analyze what is bad, if that's a poison for democracy, if you approve this, if we pass this, then we are sending democracy to the cemetery. Like I say, we are sending democracy away to bury the democracy. And that was what I say in the beginning, that we tend to imitate the mistake. We know that this is bad, but we adopt it. So from that, all the media press council member, we involved in the public debate. I almost, and we had friends, another two friends, we almost present in every debate, in the TV, in the seminars. We keep saying that we will fight until the end. I keep talking to friends in the parliament that those that they used to become a political prisoner. I say to them, this kind of article was used in the past by the Orde Baru regime to send her to the prison, and in Indonesia it's already repealed from the code, and now we are taking that to include in our law. I think it's not a good move, and also it's not the right way of guaranteeing the freedom here. But I said to them that, but if you continue to this position, we'll come to you with banner and also with other things to face you. So with that kind of pressure, last 2 days, the Minister of Justice in a public TV interview, he started to saying that it's this draft or this the criminalizing defamation is no longer a priority. That was the message, no longer a priority. And he used the term that we are considering to redefine. That was the political term he used, redefine. And I say to friends that I don't want to hear that word, redefine. What I want to hear is retire or repeal that from the from the process of debate, because redefine means that that they are trying to make nice words and then to present again. Or, for example, they say no longer a priority. It's not a priority. Means that in some time in the future they can put it in a priority again. So the struggle against that draft is still, and last 2 days, the students and the journalists, they are going to they are concentrating in the National University to do the protest, to ask the minister to stop wasting people money, wasting resources to discuss about that draft, because it's a bad thing. And for this struggle, we are counting on friends from outside. That's why I want to also to thank Jane and IFJ for that letter, for that content of analysis that you have sent. I hope that they read, but as you know that when the politicians, they get more pressure, they get more tougher in their position. But we count on you as well, all friends. So that's the situation of regarding that law. But the situation here also, the other bad news is that this pandemic has caused a lot of problem to our journalist friends. Some friends, they must, because some companies, the media companies, they also face some crisis, so they downsize the number of journalists, and also some of them, they reduce their salary. They are providing a lot of a tough option to journalists. For example, they say that you can continue here, but your salary will be reduced to 50% of salary. And then some of them, they come to us, we say that we try to understand the situation of the company, but also we ask them to do a reasonable deal, reasonable agreement with the journalists. For example, if you reduce 50%, means that you also reduce 50% of the work of the journalists. Not you reduce the salary, but you keep the work, the load of the work the same. So that's thing that we are facing here. But the good thing is that the public here is putting a lot of confidence, trust to the media because of this pandemic. Because if before the public, they don't, they tend to turn the channel of Indonesian telenovelas, Indonesian cinetrons. Now they have time to see, to watch the national TV, national radio, to listen to the government announcement on the pandemic situation. So that kind of situation that we are facing. The other challenge that we made is that because of the social distancing, a lot of journalists, they can, now they don't do like the traditional work. They met the sources, they just, sometimes only by phone. So it seemed that we reduced the soul of journalism, because meeting sources, facing the sources, speaking to sources, that's the soul of the news. But now, everything is you just call them, and because of the social distancing. So I hope that kind of description can provide some input to you and our friends, and I'm ready to accept some questions or comments after that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jill. Yes, honeymoon is over in Timor-Leste.
It seems.
Yes, it seems. Okay. Before we jump into Q&A, we can hear the last speaker from Wahyu Diatmika, or better known Komang, as Komang. And I'm hoping he's going to talk about his experience in journalism through various digital platforms. Wahyu is editor-in-chief of Tempo magazine, Indonesia. In 2015, he led the Panama paper reporting. I think this is the first time for Indonesia to do such collaborative reporting, and he initiated and he in collaboration with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. In that project, Tempo managed to expose links between several prominent names in Indonesian business and political landscape with the hidden offshore financial structure in Panama. The story was soon followed by other leaks from ICIJ, such as Panama Papers, Implant File, and Mauritius leak. Wahyu now is developing collaborative investigative project with several media in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. He is also instrumental in fellowship program for journalists and students across Indonesia to work as investigative reporters in Tempo's newsroom. In 2017, with several other editors-in-chief of independent media in Indonesia, Wahyu initiated indonesianleak.id, a platform for whistleblowers, so they can surely send document or insight of possible hidden scandal to newsroom across the country. Realizing Indonesian general election is under attack by massive misinformation and disinformation campaign in 2018, with the support of Google, Mavindo, and several other newsrooms, Wahyu involved in creation of Cek Fakta, a collaborative fact-checking initiative. This is the new one also from Indonesia. I think this is going to be a new journalism style, I think. Wahyu is also on the board of Alliance of Independent Journalists, AJI Indonesia, where he is a charge of partnership and international relations. He is also a Secretary General of Indonesian Cyber Media Association, AMSI. This is the newly respected organization, actually, formed organization for digital media in Indonesia. Wahyu believes in journalism as a conversation between a public and newsroom. That is why he always excited experiment with different forms of citizen reporting in various digital platforms to find a better way for journalism to serve public interest in digital age. Bli Komang, please.
Thank you, Andy, for that very kind introduction. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Good morning, Jane, Razi, and Bang Jill. It's an honor and it's a pleasure to speak in this very highly awaiting and very timely discussion. Just one note for that introduction, Dandi, all of that initiative, Indonesia Leaks and Cek Fakta, is supported by AJI. It's part of the work, and it will not be possible without the support and help from all of us in AJI, the one that we celebrate the anniversary today. And I would like to briefly give you an overview of the press freedom condition in Indonesia, especially after the pandemic. Our colleague from Malaysia and Timor-Leste all have give us a dark picture, and I think because we live in the same region, I think the same is also happening in Indonesia. Starting from March, I think that we are start seeing a downhill projection and downhill trend of our press freedom. If you remember, Indonesia was a bit late in acknowledging that there was a COVID-19 case in the country. Even our president, Mr. Joko Widodo, admitted that he, in the beginning, deliberately withheld some information. In his statement, I'm quoting him, he said, the president said that it was to prevent people from being panicked. But you can see from that statement that that was the style of Indonesian government in handling the pandemic. It was very secretive, lack of transparency. Then in the time where the public desperately need clarity and reference, credible reference to what really happened, that I think is a very significant factor in creating the confusion that we are now in during the pandemic. And it also created this situation where the press freedom in Indonesia is reaching a very low level, one of the lowest levels since we got the freedom back in 1998. Let me just try to map out the threats, and then I'll give some example of cases to support that conclusion that we are in a condition where press freedom is under threat. And I'll then close up with some reference on the pushback that we are also seeing happen. So I will end with the high notes, not with the low notes. So hopefully we get some more courage and spirit to fight back, especially in this anniversary of ASI. So the infodemic, as the WHO used to say, the pandemic of misinformation or infodemic, I think created by at least three main actors. The citizens also, of course, play a part during this pandemic, where everyone more tuned into their social media feeds. There's a lot of hoax, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that created a lot of confusion. And you can pick your topic ranging from why the COVID-19 happened, what is the cure, how to prevent it. All kind of hoax, all kind of misinformation are out there, and it added to the mix of this very deadly and dangerous infodemic situation. But adding to that is the second actor, public figures or celebrity, influencer, key opinion leader on social media. They also not careful enough in filtering what kind of information they put out there. We just see we just saw a very prominent celebrity a few days ago put out a video interviewing a fake scientist saying that he has found the cure for COVID-19. This is a big celebrity with millions of followers, and it soon created a lot of confusion in the society. Last but not least, the third actor that plays into this infodemic situation is official government ministers that just blurt out statement without evidence, without enough scientific backup to support their statement. They also added to this situation. In other scenario, maybe that will not cause that much damage, But in this pandemic situation where everyone is, stay home, their travel are very limited. Their only source of information is online, social media. This mixture of misinformation and disinformation created a very deadly condition. And we, the media, journalists, have to work with this context, with this kind of situation. And that explain some of the cases that we are seeing. Cases I list, at least there are 5 different types of cases where the activists, civil society activists and journalists are being persecuted, being bullied, being harassed just because they're trying to speak up their mind and express an opinion. First of the type is, of course, from the government. You can see that there's cases where the government deliberately slowed down the internet, even remove the network using the excuse of keeping public order. You can see that happen in Papua after the riot in August last year. And you can see that policy was also taken after the riot in front of the election commission after the announcement of 2019 election result. And this is an action that was then challenged by AJI to the court. I'll explain later in my in the last part. But that one type of action that contribute to the deteriorating press freedom in Indonesia. The second type is legal threat issued by the law enforcement to journalists and activists that try to speak up or publish articles that deems not in line or not accurate. So despite that, Indonesia have a press council that protect journalists and media from criminalization on paper, and no citizen or no one can sue or criminalize journalists directly. They have to go to the press council first. But despite of that, we have seen 3 cases of journalists being brought to court because of their reporting. Sadly, in Buton, Asrul in Makassar, South Sulawesi, and last is Diananta Samedi from Banjarmasin in South Kalimantan. Diananta is still await for a verdict. His trial began in June 6, and now on August 10, the judges will read out his verdict. He was accused of publishing articles that created inter-ethnic tension. In Indonesia, we call it SARA. And it is punishable by criminal. It's a criminal offense. But the funny or the ironic part of this case is Diananta is already goes to the press council. His case is already decided by the press council. He was asked to apologize and withdraw his article. So that should be the end of this. But the prosecutors and the police decided to take his case to the court anyway. So this is a very, very dangerous road for Indonesian media and journalists, because if this trend continues, then we have no protection anymore from the press law, the one that we fight for in 1999. So this is a very worrying trend. The third case is doxing, or putting out your identity online if you, as a journalist, publish something that cause controversy. This happened just a few days ago to 2 of our journalists, 2 of our fact checker at Tempo, Ikaning Tias and Zainal, and they were they were publishing articles to clear misinformation. So they put out fact check articles about claims, and those who refute their fact check articles decided to put their photos online and labeling them as pandemic terrorists because they were accused of spreading fear about the COVID-19. So this is only the latest of a string of cases of doxing that we are seeing. In many cases, when one piece of article created controversy, immediately you can see the personal information of the journalists being put out there with their home address, sometime with their personal social media account, inviting other people to attack, to online harass these journalists, and it's created a very dangerous situation for the journalists. The fourth one is bullying, terror online, trolling. This happened to activists, at least 3 cases that we take note. In the end of May, activists from Gajah Mada University in Jogja, and then in June, activists from Lampung University in Sumatra, Lampung, and also from University of Indonesia, when they try to organize online discussion about sensitive topics like Papua or other government policies or laws that they want to criticize. They put online discussion, and soon afterward they get terror on their WhatsApp account, their other platform accounts were hacked and were used to send demeaning messages. So they have to cancel all of those online discussion. So this is also a very worrying trend, because online now is the only way you can express yourself with the limitation on social event. And if that is also not safe and secure, then what happened? Because then you will have no more avenue to express yourself and express your opinion. So that's the fourth type. Last but not least is using COVID-19 tests as an excuse to intimidate. This happened last week when 2 NGOs in Kalimantan got this experience. Several health, so-called health, they pretend to be, or maybe they are from the health authority, local health authority in Samarinda, and they were forced to get tests, COVID-19 tests, and without knowing the result, they said that they have the virus, and they were taken away to the hospital without their consent. And this is very worrying because no other homes in the area were inspected, were not treated the same. Only these 2 NGO, Walhi and Pokja 30, Pokja 30, and these are 2 very vocal NGO. They keep voicing concerns and criticizing government projects related to environmental damages in Kalimantan, and they got this treatment. Using COVID-19 tests as an excuse to limit their movement, to take them without their consent to the hospital, and trying to force quarantine to these activists. So this is also another trend. Those are the 5 type of cases where we see this is contributing to the deteriorating press freedom in Indonesia. Last but not least, this is my last part, the pushback. So we try to fight this trend in AJI and with other like-minded organization. In AJI, we have founded this. AJI has founded this with others a committee for journalist safety. We coordinate, respond, and we coordinate how to push back this worrying trend. And last June, the Civil Arbitration Tribunal, or PTUN, in Indonesia, in Jakarta, Indonesia, issued a decision that basically saying that the government decision to remove internet network in Papua after the riot is against the law. So it's a very positive decision for the press in general, all the media and the journalists, and to all civil society in Indonesia. And the government did not appeal to that decision, so it's legally binding now. It shows that there are ways to push back, and the law is on that case decided that our complaint or grievances are valid, and this kind of methods or policies can endanger freedom of expression by slowing down the internet or removing the network entirely is a very, very dangerous policy because it takes out our basic freedom. Another trend is we try to also keep campaigning to the public, try to make the public understand why press freedom is important, why freedom of expression is vital, especially in this pandemic situation, and because we cannot afford to lose public support. Public support is the most important thing. We have to have the public behind us and supporting this cause, because then it will be easier to push back all that worrying trend that trying to limit the freedom of expression. We try to also educate the media not to enforce self-censorship, because that is the last straw. We cannot limit ourselves. We have to keep publishing, keep investigating, keep exposing failure in government's project or government policies, and because that's our job, that's our responsibility as the press. If we lose that, if we're not doing that, then the whole essence or the whole reason of having press freedom is gone. So we need to keep up the job, but also make sure we did a good job. We have to limit the mistake. No room for mistake, especially for this time. We have to make sure that we are accurate. Our reporting is balanced and stick to the fact, not opinionated, and all of that ethics needs to be upheld, especially in this time where the press is often criticized for being not good enough in reporting the situation. And this all has to be done under, as Bang Jill mentioned, under the economic pressure for the media. We are all media in Indonesia. There was this survey by AMSI found that at least 50 to 70% of advertising revenue has gone, after the pandemic. So a lot of media is suffering. We are start seeing layoff. Salary cut has been done from a few months ago. Many of us are now working with 20 or 30, 40% salary cut. And despite of that, we are not, I know there are some controversy about the effort by the Press Council and other associations to ask for government relaxation on several tax and media obligation to pay several tax and electricity bill and so on. But I can assure you that we are not asking for handouts. We are not asking for, we're just asking for delay in paying those obligations because we need to survive. The media needs to survive. I think that's all I would like to share, Mas Dendi. I hope it gives some overview and then give some idea of what happened in Indonesia. Thank you, Mas Dendi.
Thank you. It's very comprehensive presentation in picturing the real situation of media in Indonesia. Thank you very much, Bli Komang. I actually highlight what Bli Komang mentioned is doxing became the significant and the main threat of press freedom in Indonesia. So now we are moving to Q&A, and there are a lot of questions actually in the chat room. Some of them directly asking to the speaker, and I try to read one by one actually, because I'm not expert in bundling. So this is from Rahma Fitri Nur Mitra from Aksi Foundation. This is for Jane. How the government illustrate the rapidly deteriorating climate for press freedom across Southeast Asia? Are backsliding from democracy and cracking down on reporters the outbreak of COVID-19? Jen, did you get it, the question? Just please unmute, please.
Okay. So has there been a deterioration? Is that the question?
Yes, how the government illustrated the rapidly deteriorating climate for press freedom across South Asia. Yes, are backsliding from democracy and cracking down on reporters the outbreak of COVID-19.
There actually has been a sort of trend, you know, of backsliding before COVID that has been monitored by journalists' unions and the IFJ over a number of years. You know, as I'd outlined, I think COVID has given governments a level of cover to get away with things that they wouldn't have previously. There is you know, to use the word opportunity, when the public is, you know, when the levels of fear are so high that the public has kind of let things pass by because they want the protection of society. You know, the fear of the unknown of what's going to happen, you know, has allowed governments to engineer more control, and we've seen that happen. You know, particularly where we're seeing things as Wahoo said, and also in as Razi said, in Malaysia, you know, where there in spaces like social media is where we're seeing control, you know, over journalists. And it's not just journalists though; these are precedents being set that will impact wider society. And I think this is where it's important that we do have the dialogue going between media and governments. This isn't an us and them kind of scenario. Actually, media are working, you know, in the public interest and are working, you know, trying to work with government. But when governments are being selective about who they're admitting to press conferences, you know, you have to worry about the state of press freedom when you know, you're being selective about what media you want to represent the story. It should be all media, you know. So, you know, Rodrigo Duterte in the Philippines is well known for being very selective on who he will admit to his club. And so, you know, that sort of authoritarianism has been documented in a number of countries. You know, in Myanmar, you know, you have a similar sort of controls happening, although you have a lot more journalists going to jail in Myanmar. You know, where the advocacy levels are high in places like Indonesia, you see a lot more of that pushback. As Wahoo said, there is a pushback against governments that are trying to do these sort of things. there definitely has been a backsliding. It's being documented. There's been an increase in attacks, an increase in pressures and intimidations. But I do think, you know, this is about holding the line, you know, holding the line against governments, against the, you know, the forces of misinformation, because the media has a vital role to play. And the media is not the enemy here. The media is part of the greater picture. But yeah, I think my line would be, we have to hold the line and keep the communication flow going and questioning it on those issues.
Thank you, Jen. There is an additional question for you. Yeah, I read one by one because some of them asked in Bahasa Indonesia and some of in English. So I just try to translate into English first. This is from Eko Wiono, Nganjuk. What is the role of the media in providing comfort to media lovers, to readers, I mean, with various information about pandemic COVID-19, how to form new readers to educate each other positively about the impact of a pandemic, so that state policy stakeholder can strengthen various joints and lines of society.
I think, yeah, that's, I mean, media literacy, and it's been raised by the other speakers, media literacy is one of the big messages coming out of this, because, you know, talk amongst journalists, we know the importance, we know what we're here for, we know, you know, what role we're meant to play. But I think where we've been, I guess where the full story hasn't been told is where the public comes into that, and understanding that the public owns the media just as much as anyone. And so media literacy is understanding that the media is actually informing and part of the society, and that the public is part of that. It owns a stake in the media. It's not an us and them. So I think one of the things that we would, you know, be pushing forward out of this is actually, I mean, I do think we've seen a rise in uptake of quality news during the pandemic, and people are subscribing to news outlets where they never have before, and I think that's a really big positive. There may be a wash down on media that are not abiding by ethics, but I mean, those things happen in any case. But I definitely think there should be a lot more research on the impact when media reporting is cut or reduced or blocked, that we need to research that impact on the wider society. And it's only then when we can make that connection between the important role that media plays in informing as well as holding governments to account, that the public will begin to, you know, have a greater respect for the media's role in all the freedoms that citizens enjoy in their lives. So research, I think, is needed right now so we can assess the positives and also the damage that's being done by lack of information.
Okay, thank you. And then this is for Blikomang, and also for you, Jane. One of the big problem press freedom in Indonesia is how our government still ban to foreign journalists entering and covering Papua. As we know, Papua issue is not only about politics, but mostly about environment issues. And of course, about human rights. How your opinion to overcome the problem of press freedom? This is Christopher Piano Mogabay. Blikomang first.
Okay, thank you, Mas Dandi, and thank you, Christopher, for the question. I think we have seen a change of policy by the government in Papua. President Joko Widodo started his first term with a promise to open up Papua and start inviting, even allowing journalists, foreign journalists to visit and report from Papua. And we are not seeing the fulfillment of that promise. A lot of foreign journalists are being banned. We take note of one case where foreign journalist was even kicked out from the province after one reporting about I'm sorry, it was a food shortage situation in Papua a few months, a year ago. So we regret this trend. We hope the government keep their promise because opening up Papua is one way to reach a solution, to start discussing the issue openly and have outside journalists will help shed lights on issues that might be overlooked or might be hidden, might not be found by local journalists in Indonesia or even by the government. So the more open Papua, I think it's better to work together a solution in Papua.
Okay, thank you. Jens, how about your opinion about press freedom in Papua?
It's been disappointing. You know, we had, as we've heard the promises on the political podium about opening up Papua. This has been promised. You know, we would hope that a government would stand by those promises. And it is really important that we have a diversity of media able to report on that space, because we know that the situation for local media is very dangerous as well. You know, it's not always possible for local journalists to go and expose information that some don't want told. These are people who are eyeballing their enemies on a day-to-day basis, and it's a very dangerous space for that reason. So, you know, foreign journalists need to be able to be given the access that they were promised. They need to be able to be given that access without having to go through monumental hurdles to get in there. It has been, you know, historically so challenging to try and overcome those hurdles to gain access, that journalists are often forced to take extreme measures to get in there to tell the story and risk their lives and others to try and do so. Now, that's not to say they're wrong to do that, but when you don't have access, then these, you know, this happens. And we can't be happy with sort of government kind of led, you know, familiarization trips that only allow you to see what they want you to see. We need the full story to be told, and it's only then that you can start formulating solutions for that really troubled space. And so we want the government to come true with its promise.
Thank you, Jen. For friends who attend in the webinar, if you got trouble with English, we prepare translation, but we will distribute after the event, because I don't have ability to translate simultaneously. So sorry. But don't worry, buat teman-teman nanti akan ada translate untuk pembicaraan kita sekarang ini. Next, for Razi from Mahdi Kompas. In Al Jazeera case and Malaysia kini, could you elaborate the role of Malaysia Press Council? Is this exist Press Council now? Okay. But anyway, okay. Do they take the lead with journalist community to defend the freedom of the press? Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Malaysia don't have their press council yet. What we have is a pro-tem committee to draft the bill to amend to make for the existence of press council. However, in especially the Malaysia Kini case, we have several media bodies, including the biggest union, the NUJ, National Union of Journalists Malaysia, together have expressed support to Malaysia Kini and Stephen Gan on the case as well. And I think we sent a letter a few days ago to our Prime Minister highlighting our concern about that, together with about 12 other civil society and NGO, including 6 of our journalist group, various journalist group across Malaysia. And for Al Jazeera, I think several in the journalist group like us, Geram, the CIJ, Center for Independent Journalism, and others has expressed their concern about the heavy-handed as well. And we, for our part, I think we engage with the individual journalists from a group that and have several discussion on the topic, and yeah, they are also concerned and is very concerned with what is happening to Malaysia Kini and Al Jazeera. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raji. And we have another question. We have time. We have still 30 minutes to go. And from Bambang Irawan, yes, how about the political situation and condition of press freedom in Southeast Asia, authoritarian countries that suppress the news about COVID? I think this is for Jill. Jill, I think you can answer this question because no specific speaker targeted. And then also Jane, I think Jill, you can answer the question first. The situation of press freedom in South Asia related to the authoritarian countries. Please. Unmute, please, first. Okay.
Okay. I think Jane just mentioned a bit about the situation in Myanmar, and also in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and even before the pandemic, we know what's the situation in those countries, and also we knew our big brother in Thailand under the military rule, and then the Philippines, you know, the most democratic, the most freer country in 80s in the Southeast Asia. We with Duterte in the power, turned the Philippines, and I think it's the most I think the most traumatic environment for journalistic, and so we already know the situation before the pandemic, before the COVID-19, and this COVID-19, the presence of this COVID-19, it's provide a strong reason somehow to these politicians to take more to put more limits or restriction on media, and they are using this public interest of the social distancing also to limit media or journalists movement or to protect the information. So I think that's the challenge for not just in those we call it authoritarian countries in Southeast Asia, but Timor-Leste, the one that used to measure as the most democratic in the region, are heading to that direction. For example, with the introduction of this draft of criminalized defamation, it seems that the politician, as happened back in history, once they have it's sometimes I think that when the politicians they get too long in the power, when they get old, they start to blame the good foods. It's not because of the food itself; it's because of their body. Because of the high cholesterol, so they start to blame foods. The same things happen in the politics. They start to blame democracy. They start to blame the freedom of the press because the impact of the press freedom of the democracy to the safety of the security of their power. So that was what the argument that I made to the public here in Timor-Leste, to the politician here, that the question, the problem is not about the democracy or the formation. The problem is about how you politician adjust yourself to the demands, to the requirement of the democracy, or to the requirement of free society. When you become politician, you must allow yourself to be criticized, and at certain point to be insulted if you don't follow your promise during the electoral campaign. So I think this kind of thing that provide reason, more reason to the politician. But my reference is, I think, Aji. I love that in those countries, we should encourage friends in those countries to be brave, to have the power to combine efforts to fight, to struggle against this. Because I believe that for freedom of expression, for democracy, for human rights, we have no boundary. That's what I learned when I was in Indonesia with friends in pro-democracy, struggling for democracy in Indonesia, and also independence from Timor-Leste. And for that, I say that for these kind of things, we have no boundary. In Papua or in Burma or in Myanmar, in everything, it's our collective problem. So we need to encourage friends in, I think, in Malaysia as well, the discussion to move on with the establishment of a press council there. We should encourage that. What we do, for example, with Indonesian Press Council, Dewan Pers Indonesia, Thai Press Council. We have set up in last year this Southeast Asia Press Council network to exchange discussion, to encourage friends in Malaysia and also in other countries like in Cambodia or in Vietnam. Well, we don't want to intervene to the political things, but at least we want that there is space, enough space there for journalists, for people to provide information to the public, not keep the public having one-way information from the government. The information that full of like Mas Common or Bli Common just mentioned, it's full of secrecy, and they want to hide not just the effect or the impact of the pandemic, but instead of saving the community, they try to save their good image, to the brand. They are putting their image, their self-interest to the public instead of the public, the interest of the public. I think that what we it's my point of view on that. So we must. I think that's why IFJ and also unfortunately we have some problem with SIPA. We still face some institutional problem that we hope that in coming in short time will come. So we have a regional efforts, combined efforts to continuously monitoring and also encouraging friends in those countries to to continue provide as they could provide information to their public, so their public can have access. Because the idea of shutting down, Facebook also start here as well. The debate on when it comes to the hate speech here, some of our MPs here also, they come out with the idea to shut down Facebook, shut down, things that like that, ideas of that, it's also emerge here. Politicians, I think they have a same, when come to power, it's happened everywhere. They tend to protect themselves. They tend to introduce laws that more to protect themselves than to protect the public. So I think that's what I can share with you.
Thank you, James. How do you see the phenomena of authoritarian countries related to the press freedom in the region?
I think one of the big issues that or themes that needs to be sort of addressed going forward is the question, or is the dilemma of media sustainability, and the sort of elephant in the room around this is the role that the social media and the big online publishing platforms have had on media. This is a conversation that has been a long time coming, but that is perhaps being pushed forward now, thankfully, at last, by the pandemic. Unfortunately, we've got this situation that we have these authoritarian regimes. We also know that once they're in power, they're very hard to budge. But so we need to think of better solutions around that, and building media sustainability has got to be the way forward through that, because we can't just topple governments. When these people get into power, they stay there and they're not going to give up their position. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely, as we know. So this is where the conversation has got to be had with the likes of Facebook, with the likes of Google, where they and it's happening. It's happening in countries around the world where they're being brought to the table to say, look, you know, recognize that you are publishers, and as publishers, whether they're paying for it or not, which they're not, they need to give something back to support the media that they are decimating through, you know, through almost, it's a parasitic sort of approach to publication. They take from the media, but without giving a cent back. So these conversations are happening in different political spaces in different countries around the world. And I think we need to find a way to support media into the future, that media is not at, vulnerable to authoritarian regimes. We need, you know, more things like, you know, the Consortium of International Journalists. We need more things like international collaborations or journalism collaborations that protect journalism as a whole, because we know that, you know, when there's one person like fighting to expose something, they become extremely exposed themselves. So it's only through that protection of numbers, through having strong media partnerships or groups or consortiums, that we can actually build a strong media that can stand up to powerful people, not just politicians, but business leaders who can you know, carry out lengthy court cases just to slow the media down from doing its job, or deflect attention away from what it's doing wrong. So I think we need to find better ways to support the media. I think the media and journalists are doing a great job through the pandemic to tell the truth and to you know, call powers to account on their handling of the crisis. And I think we have to have faith that the public will see that. I know, you know, we're seeing unions, the membership of unions increasing in some countries. We're seeing, you know, subscriptions in online publications rising, and so in some cases. So, you know, the appetite is there to support media sustainability. We just need to keep at it, and trying to find ways that we can work together. I think collaborations are one way. I think networks and solidarity, which we're seeing in the case of Maria Reza, which we're seeing in Malaysia in the case of Stephen Gann, we need to build a voice that deafens out some of these authoritarian regimes that have been in power and had their way. You know, it's only through standing up together that we can try and overcome some of these challenges, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Jane. We have another question for Raji and Bli Komang. First, what is the number of cases of violence against journalists, apparatus robbery, and threat against women journalists in reporting cases in Indonesia and Malaysia specifically? And then second, how to deal with information restriction, how to deal with the information restrictions as well, and decreases press freedom and the quality of journalism during a pandemic. The two questions for you and for Raji and Bli Komang from Rahma Fitri Nur. Bli Komang first.
Oh, I would just like to have Raji to come first, but of course.
Go first.
For the first questions, thank you for the questions. The first one, I think, I don't have the number on top of my head, but AJI has a website open for public that record cases, violence against journalists, harassment, and the one that mentioned by the participant there, effort for what is it? The capture of equipment, confiscation of equipment by law enforcement. I think it happened quite often, especially on demonstration or public rally, where it's still, unfortunately it still happened. The police often cannot differentiate between reporter and participant of the rally or the social protest. Even though we have identified ourselves, we have used other, outfit that can show that we are journalists, not part of the rally. It's still a lot of reports about journalists being harassed and being mistreated in public events such as that one. So that's I think the short answer is it still happened, but the detailed answer about the number you can check on ACI's website. We have a special section for that one. Rajiv, do you want to come over for that point?
Oh yeah.
Later for the.
Okay. We don't really keep like a record, like public record on it, because as you know, we don't really have that capacity around here. However, we do have like several cases of harassment that we compile for ourselves and our member from complaints from journalists since 2014. So during that time, there was like several instances of problems, especially during the rally, like in Malaysia rally and several other public rally where journalists were beaten up by the authorities and even the protesters. So until now, I think the numbers per complaint is more than 50, I think. But we don't really have the capacity to listen to all. Just people who wanted to send their complaints to us. But the most recent one is for the question is about women journalists. So we do have complaints regarding from some journalists who were being doxxed by some political party supporters. 2 or 3 Malaysia kini women journalists and about 2 or 3 Al Jazeera staff in Malaysia who were doxxed by several Facebook page. And of course, we got Tajni Sukumaran from SCMP who were called by the police because of a tweet regarding the migrant stuff. So yeah, I'm sorry, we don't really have that numbers.
Yeah, and for the second questions regarding how do we respond to the quality of journalists or quality of reporting in the media? What if we in the media also made some mistake? And I think it's an important point to add to the previous topic when Jane and Bang Jill mentioned the need for getting public support and also getting a clear guideline on the relationship between publishers and platform. I think these questions shed lights on the third factors in this media ecosystem, which is the media itself. What do we do about the media that are not, doing proper reporting, or sometimes they focus more on sensational issues, or sometimes, as one of the question implies, social media content, inaccurate social media content that just being rewritten, republished on mainstream media, which we are seeing now more and more because of the traffic demand of mainstream media still, looking for traffic. All of that questions around quality reporting and quality journalism, I think, is more and more important nowadays. And this is a decisive moment for the media to really focus on engagement, really focus on, serving their audience and not really, chasing traffic, anonymous traffic that you cannot identify and it can come from anywhere. It can come from bots or machines. Then you are not really serving real people, real citizens that really need proper information, quality reporting. So I think this pandemic is also an opportunity for the media to start focusing on their community, their core reader, and really asking what does the service that we can provide as a media, as a journalist to our community. Because I think that's the key to survive. Jane mentioned about media sustainability, and also Bang Jill mentioned about the need to get public support. This is one way to start it from within, from the media itself. And this is one thing that we sometimes forget because, in conventional media before the digital era, the relationship between newsroom and audience is not really close. We sometimes don't really care how people or who are the people who read our articles. But now engagement is very, very significant factors. And if we cannot identify, if the media cannot spell out their mission statement, their unique value, what kind of service they add to the public conversation, and what benefit they offer, then their reason for existence is really in trouble. And the public can easily dismiss having the need for good and quality media. As Dan said, we in the media know the answer for that question. We know why we are here, why we are doing what we are doing, but the public is not necessarily understand that. So it's our job to make that more clear, and our job to keep doing that service that the public needs.
Thank you. Just follow up a question for Raji. What should we do as a journalist for the long term against the current pandemic situation, which is forcing all digitals, especially for interviewers only, not just any reporter?
Okay, firstly, I would like to acknowledge that it's beautiful how Abang Wahyu just said what media should do, because one good thing about the reporting in the pandemic is that the media itself didn't focus. I think most of Malaysian media likes to focus on the spicy stories, political stuff, especially because we have political turmoil like every few months. But during the pandemic, they started to bring up the community stories about people who are doing their best to continue their lives. And then it returns back, and then it turns out to have more and more people started to turn, which get to the second question, to turn to online thing, and they started to, okay, we can start to interview people online. We even have this reporting reporting politician and reporting staff just brought a camera and then say we want to do the story about the frontliners, the health workers. Just bring one camera and then everyone could see, and everyone tuned in for that. Everyone started to the media started to get more popular and more viewers, more readers. I think this bring out the creativity of the journalists on the ground on how to engage and how to promote themselves more. And because of this online thing, I think it's a bit easier because you don't have to go out. You don't have to buy newspaper. It's just the discipline of people who. The problem is that we have to nurture the culture of people who think that the media is working with them and for them. Because in time before, you have this, you buy newspaper, you subscribe for newspaper because you think that it's important and you are part of it. You want to sell your car, you go to newspaper. You want to see that bankruptcy notice is also in the newspaper. But it's not as important as it, because I think our newspaper subscription has been going down steadily, and if we can nurture the culture of the public to trust the media again, even online media, the online media have to automatically have to make sure that the audience is there, because when you get, like I said, in Malaysia kini, and they get the subscription base, and if they could live with it. I mean, like the subscription to help them to grow more and more, they can do their own stuff. And most of the online media is still being handled by the problems because they are relying on the funding and on the funding from the funders, and the advertisement. This is steadily going down. I think this is a good opportunity to everyone being creative, engaging, and think the new way to present the news. I think we could have this forum when everyone else is thousands of miles away. We could do the same stuff we do for our reporting. We just have to be creative on it. I think that's how people will see that the journalism could see itself, like how the journalists do their work and how it affected them.
Thank you very much, Raji. Before we end the discussion, I'd like you to just give a last statement, 1 minute each, starting from Jane, please.
Look, I mean, we talk about the power of influencers. It was only a moment ago that influencers were everything. And here we are in the midst of a pandemic, and influencers aren't going to be the ones that bring us the facts and the information that we need as a society to get through this. You know, the information that we're dealing with is changing daily. It changes so quick. And so this is a time for media to really shine. And if we can bring together you know, collectively the power of that we have with, and the skills we have within our ranks, and there's a place there for unions to really take a lead on this and support journalists in the work that they're trying to do and in improving and strengthening their journalism. So, and there's a real, I think there's a real desire there from the public at this time, you know, for quality journalism, quality information. And I think we need to keep holding the line, as I said, and fighting the good fight in the public interest together as journalists and as unions. And I'd like Aji to be at the forefront of that as well in Indonesia.
Thank you. Jill, please. Unmute first.
Sorry. Yeah. This, in my point of view, this pandemic has bring us to, particularly journalism, to this its traditional social responsibility, to become the voice of the voiceless, of the people. So the influence that we are going to do should lead to rise the social solidarity between the people, and also social solidarity between the media community. So with that solidarity that we bring up, I think that's the humanity, the virtue of humanity that we need to build up in this difficult situation. So I continue to encourage friends in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and also we need to communicate with our friends in Burma, in Thailand, to work together in this difficult situation, particularly when the politicians also they try to combine their efforts, influence to build their castle of power against us. So this was the need for that. So solidarity is the key for me.
Thank you, Jill. Raji, your turn, please.
I would like to thank you for this opportunity because I was talking to the Bang Dendi a few days ago that I am the youngest and my position is like the newest here, and we don't have that experience of dealing with stuff. So like I said, I'm here to learn, and as Abang just said, yeah, solidarity with the media community in this region is very important, because I think we could learn and we could help each other a lot. Because without journalism, I think we would be living in the worst problematic, especially coming from our history of government that is very critical towards like holding the information. So I would like to thank you, and I hope that we can have we can have another chance to talk and discuss and to further enhance the communication and relationship. So thank you.
Thank you, Raji. Bli Komang, please.
Thank
Your
you,
last.
Andy.
Yes.
I think we all agree, based on what all other panelists have explained, that press freedom in the region is on defensive. We face a very dangerous threat from all sides. And I think the key to win this battle is getting public support. We need to, as Bang Gio said, go to the roots of traditional journalism, engage with our readers, increase media literacy, make them understand what the role of media, what are the responsibility of journalism, why it's important, it's paramount to have press freedom and freedom of expression, especially in this kind of situation. Not less press freedom in time of pandemic, but more press freedom, because this is limited access of information and people need to know what is important to do, what are the next steps, how to make themselves safe, prevent the COVID-19 infect ourselves, what to do. So this is all information that are needed by the public, and the media is there to provide this. And also, I think this is a good chance to innovate, being creative, as Raji said, find new way to report, to tell stories, to engage, and don't let this pandemic limit ourselves, and use this as an opportunity to really, be the best version of journalists that we can.
Thank you very much, Bli Komang. I'm not supposed to summarize the discussion due to time limit, and I don't want to reduce the value of discussion by summarizing this interesting event. But I note some important point here. Solidarity is the key point to strengthen our journalism community in South Asia. And then also collaborative journalism is very important, strengthening journalist union, as Jane always point out. And then there is a problem that we have to solve, is doxing become the threat of the press freedom, and as well as authoritarian regime misuse the situation of COVID-19 to block freedom of the press. I'm sorry if I didn't get all your questions. I tried to package them, but I'm not an expert in packaging and simultaneous translating. And I just want to thank James, Raji, Jill, and Bli Komang. And I also want to thank to those AJI members and staff who make the webinar possible. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Have a good day. Bye. Thank you.
Happy birthday to AJI.
Happy birthday,
Thank you.
Ajay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.
Thank you.